Jaan Yaman's Sandokan is heading to Hollywood. And this is one of those moments that is easy to underestimate if you only look at the headline for 2 seconds and move on. Because on the surface people might say, okay, it's a festival screening, nice, cool, what's the big deal? But when you slow down and really think about it, this is exactly the kind of step that shows how a project starts moving beyond local excitement and into a bigger international conversation. So in this video, we're going to break down what Italia 2026 actually is, why Sandokan being part of it matters, what this says about Jaan Yaman's international positioning, and why this Hollywood moment could be more important than it first appears. And if you enjoy clean updates about Jaan Yaman and his global rise, subscribe now because we're going to keep following every real milestone. First of all, let's get one thing clear. Not every international event means the same thing. There are a lot of posts online that make everything sound huge, historic, world-changing, career-defining, and sometimes it becomes impossible to separate genuine progress from fan hype. But this story is interesting because it sits in a very credible middle zone. It is not some random rumor. It is not a low-quality repost. It is not a fan fantasy about an imaginary global takeover. At the same time, it is also not something we need to exaggerate into Jaan has already conquered Hollywood. The truth is more grounded than that, and honestly that makes it stronger. When a project like Sandokan appears in a Hollywood-based Italian cultural and industry showcase like Italia, that tells us something very specific. It tells us the series is being presented not just as a domestic TV product, but as a title that can represent Italian production value, international ambition, and cross-border appeal. And that matters. Because this is the exact zone where a star like Jaan Yaman can continue transforming his image from popular Turkish actor with a passionate fan base into recognizable international lead attached to exportable premium productions. That shift is the whole story here. 4 years, Jaan has already had visibility beyond Turkey. That part is not new. His popularity in Italy, Spain, and other markets is obvious. Fans know it, the press knows it, and social media has shown it again and again. But popularity alone is not the final goal. Popularity is powerful, yes, but the next step is industry legitimacy in broader spaces. The next step is being attached to projects that travel. The next step is having your name show up in rooms where buyers, festival audiences, entertainment media, and international decision-makers are all paying attention. That is why a moment like this matters. Because Sandokan is not just another title in Jaan's career. Sandokan is the kind of role that signals scale. It signals ambition. It signals mythology. It signals masculinity, action, adventure, spectacle, and legacy all at once. This is not a casual rom-com lead. This is not a comfortable repeat of something safe. This is a more symbolic role. Sandokan carries history. Sandokan carries cultural memory. Sandokan carries expectations. And when Jaan steps into that world, he is not only acting in a new series. He is stepping into an identity that is much larger than one season, one promo cycle, or one country. That's why Hollywood matters in this context. Not because one screening magically changes everything overnight, but because visibility in Los Angeles gives the project a different frame. It changes the way people talk about it. It changes the way media can package it. Changes the way fans can interpret its journey. Suddenly this is not just the new Sandokan series coming from Italy. Now it becomes Sandokan arrives in Hollywood. Even if the underlying event is still a screening, the symbolism is stronger. And in entertainment, symbolism matters a lot. Think about how careers grow internationally. It usually does not happen in one explosive leap. Most of the time it happens in stages. First there is national fame, then regional expansion, then strong fan communities abroad, then bigger co-productions, then prestige events, festival presence, curated showcases, industry conversations, and selective international positioning. It is a ladder, and every step on that ladder helps the next one feel more natural. So if you ask me, this Italia moment is not important because it proves Jaan Yaman has made it in Hollywood. That would be too simplistic. It is important because it shows that the Sandokan project is being positioned in a way that keeps widening the circle. And every time that circle gets wider, Jaan's profile grows with it. Now let's talk about perception. Jaan Yaman has one of the most interesting image evolutions in recent years because his international story has never been only about acting credits. It has also been about persona, presence, headlines, attention, magnetism. He has always generated strong reactions. People notice him. Fans support him intensely. Media outlets use him as a clickable figure. But with that kind of visibility also comes a challenge. The challenge is proving that the conversation can keep evolving beyond celebrity aura and into sustained project value. That is where Sandokan becomes so strategic. Sandokan gives him a project with weight. A project that sounds big before you even watch a single scene. A project that carries built-in recognition. A project that visually and thematically fits the more epic, action-oriented international image he has been moving toward. And when a project like that receives spotlight in Los Angeles through Italia, it reinforces the idea that Jaan is not standing still. He is still moving upwards, still expanding, still being packaged for bigger spaces. And there is something else I think people miss. International growth is not just about English-language projects. A lot of people think global only counts if it comes directly through a major American studio or an obvious Hollywood franchise. But that is outdated thinking. Today, global visibility can grow through prestige European productions, cross-market distribution, curated festival showcases, streaming exposure, multilingual press coverage, and strong visual branding. You do not need to become a completely different actor overnight. You need to become easier for the international industry to understand and easier for audiences in different territories to accept. That is exactly what a title like Sandokan can do. Can work for fans who already love Jaan. It can work for people curious about large-scale action and adventure storytelling. It can work for media that want a clean international angle. It can work for markets that respond to glamorous male leads with a strong visual identity. It can even work for people who have never followed Jaan closely before but suddenly see him framed inside a bigger production narrative. And once that happens, the conversation changes. Instead of only asking, "Is Jaan still popular?" people start asking, "What kind of international route is he building?" That is a much stronger question, because popularity rises and falls. But strategic career positioning can have a longer life. Now, does this mean Sandokan is suddenly guaranteed to dominate every market? No. And that is where we should stay smart. A Hollywood screening is not the same thing as global domination. It is not a final result. It is a signal. It is a marker. It is a useful piece of positioning. And the best way to read it is not emotionally, but structurally. Structurally, what do we see? We see that Sandokan is being treated as a project worthy of presentation in a high-visibility cultural context in Los Angeles. We see that this is not being hidden in a corner. We see it being framed with confidence. We see it being used as a representation of contemporary Italian TV excellence and ambition. And if Sandokan is being used that way, then Jaan Yaman is naturally part of that message. He is not outside it. He is one of the faces carrying it. That is big. And from a channel perspective, from our perspective as people tracking Jaan's international journey, this matters because it gives us a very clean story to tell. Not fake hype. Not gossip. Not random speculation. Clean story. The story is simple. Jaan Yaman Sandokan is stepping into a Hollywood spotlight through Italia 2026, and that shows the project is being taken seriously as part of a bigger international showcase. That is the headline. But the deeper layer is even more interesting. The deeper layer is that this helps stabilize Jaan's transition into a more globally marketable screen identity. And that identity is increasingly built around scale, confidence, and cross-border appeal. He is no longer discussed only as the guy from a successful romantic era. More and more, he is being discussed through ambition-heavy projects, stronger visual worlds, and bigger strategic positioning. That is evolution. And let's be honest, that evolution was necessary. Because once an actor becomes strongly associated with one style or one era, the challenge is always the same. How do you move forward without losing what made people care in the first place? If you change too little, people say you are repeating yourself. If you change too much, people say you lost your essence. The smartest move is to keep the recognizable core while changing the frame around it. And Sandokan feels like exactly that kind of move. You still get charisma. You still get physical presence. You still get star power. But now those things are placed inside a more epic, internationally promotable frame. That is how reinvention works when it is done well. And this is why I don't see the Italia 2026 moment as just a nice little event mention. I see it as part of a broader pattern. A pattern where Jaan keeps collecting signs that his career is being pushed into larger symbolic territory. Some signs are very public. Some are subtle. Some become headlines. Some look small at first and then gain importance later when you look back and connect the dots. This may be one of those dot-connecting moments. Because imagine the bigger picture. You have Sandokan, a title with heritage and international flavor. You have Jaan Yaman, a star whose appeal clearly crosses borders. You have an industry and media environment increasingly hungry for exportable European storytelling. And then you place that project in Los Angeles, in a curated festival context that highlights Italian excellence on a global stage. That combination is not random. That combination says the people around the project understand presentation. They understand the importance of framing. They understand that global momentum is built not only through release dates, but through narrative. And narrative shapes careers. If the narrative becomes, Jaan Yaman keeps turning up in internationally visible spaces with increasingly ambitious projects, that is a very strong narrative. It opens doors. It attracts curiosity. Keeps the press interested. Keeps the fan base energized. And maybe most importantly, it builds continuity. Because careers do not grow from isolated moments. They grow from sequences. One strong moment is good. A sequence of strong moments is what creates real momentum. That is why I think this Hollywood chapter is worth paying attention to. Not because we need to scream that everything is massive. Not because we need to force drama into the story. But because this is the kind of development that quietly strengthens a career profile in a way that can become obvious only later. And there is also a confidence factor here. A project does not get presented like this unless there is confidence in what it represents. Confidence in the production. Confidence in the brand value. Confidence in the image. Confidence that people will care enough to look. Confidence that it belongs in that space. And once again, if Sandokan belongs in that space, then Jaan belongs in that space too. That matters for fans, of course. But it also matters beyond fans. Because the real goal of international growth is reaching people who are not already emotionally invested. It is easy to impress people who already support you. The harder task is appearing relevant to people who are neutral, curious, or even skeptical. A Hollywood showcase setting helps with that. It creates another level of seriousness around the conversation. It invites a wider audience to look again. So for me, the takeaway is clear. Jaan Yaman's Sandokan appearing at Italia 2026 is not just a cool headline. It is a meaningful signal about how the project is being positioned and how Jaan's international image continues to evolve. It tells us Sandokan is being treated as more than a routine release. It tells us there is confidence behind the title. And it tells us that Jaan's global path is still moving, still expanding, and still finding new stages. That is the real value of this moment. And maybe that is the best way to end it. Not with exaggerated promises, but with perspective. Hollywood does not suddenly certify everything. One event does not decide an entire career. But moments like this do matter because they show direction. They show intent. They show ambition. And in Jaan Yaman's case, the direction still looks international. The intent still looks bold. And the ambition still looks very real. So yes, Sandokan going to Italia 2026 matters. It matters because it is another sign that Jaan Yaman is not just holding on to old attention. He is continuing to build a bigger story.